Farmer Andy Hatch grows and produces what the state of Wisconsin is famous for.
Cows and cheese. It's really what, built our state and still is a hugely important part of our economy. $46 billion impact on our state.
A key source of Hatch's income is a specialty cheese that ages on racks in his facility.
It will age for about a year before we sell it. It's in here biding its time, becoming delicious.
To compete with European cheese producers that are heavily subsidized by their governments, Hatch needs to upgrade and expand.
To be competitive, we need support from public institutions, from the government.
Hatch turned to the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, for funding.
We applied for and were awarded federal funding through the NRCS. And that funding was meant to cover about 25% of a project that will stretch over $1 million.
Hatch had already spent about $50,000 on designs for modern, environmentally friendly facilities for housing and feeding cows that produce milk for cheese, when he received notice in January that funding for USDA conservation projects was frozen.
We've not started construction, and we won't until we're sure that the funding we were promised is going to come through.
We're not getting paid or reimbursed for work that we have done.
Joe Tamandel is executive director of the Dairy Grazing Alliance, which also depends on USDA funding for a variety of projects, including apprenticeship programs intended to train a new generation of dairy farmers and agricultural workers.
We understand, the objectives of the administration and coming in and making sure that there isn't any abuse of the systems. And we just hope that we're not an unintended consequence of it, because we really align with what this administration is looking at doing.
Uncertainty is the biggest risk for all actors in the agricultural supply chain.
Andrew Stevens is an assistant professor of agriculture and applied econometrics at the University of Wisconsin. He says even if funds begin to flow again, farmers will be wary about future reimbursements.
The uncertainty of these federal freezes is really going to shift how farmers are making decisions and calls into question things that used to be taken for granted.
In her first comments to reporters after being confirmed as the Trump administration's U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins said one of her top priorities was addressing federal funding freezes.
If there are farmers that are indeed waiting for payments that have been committed to them, those will come through.
We will pause. We will wait.
Farmer Andy Hatch hopes the federal funding he was promised arrives soon.
But if it doesn't, we won't be able to build.
Despite the funding delays, the USDA projects overall net U.S. farm income in 2025 will increase about 30% over 2024. Kane, Farabaugh, VOA News, Dodgeville, Wisconsin.